Dance for us, Maid. Brielle Carrington's voice rang across the glass-roofed ballroom, sharp enough to stop the orchestra between two notes. 300 guests turned toward the service aisle. Aaliyah Monroe stood beside a silver dessert cart in a neat black-and-white maid's uniform, holding a tray of champagne flutes. Around her, Brielle's closest friends laughed behind jeweled fans and crystal glasses. "Come on," Brielle said, circling her in a scarlet gown. "You've been staring at the dance floor all evening. Show us what girls from your neighborhood call dancing." A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Aaliyah's face remained calm, but her fingers tightened beneath the tray. "I'm working, Miss Carrington." "That wasn't a request." Brielle took one glass from the tray, poured the champagne near Aaliyah's shoes and smiled. "Now you have a stage." Laughter burst from her friends. Then a man's voice came from behind them. "That's enough." Billionaire Sebastian Vale crossed the ballroom in a black tuxedo, his expression colder than anyone had ever seen it. Brielle turned, expecting him to defend her. Instead, Sebastian stopped in front of Aaliyah and offered his hand. "May I have this dance?" Aaliyah stared at his open palm as if it carried a question far more dangerous than the one he had spoken aloud. Nobody in that ballroom knew she had not danced in public for 7 years. Nobody knew why she had stopped. And Brielle had no idea the song beginning beneath the chandeliers was connected to the secret Aaliyah had spent years trying to bury. "Tell me where you're watching from tonight, and stay until the end," because Brielle's cruel joke was about to expose an old betrayal. 3 weeks earlier, Aaliyah arrived at Vale House before sunrise. The estate stood on the edge of Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, surrounded by winter gardens, private docks, and white stone terraces overlooking the water. She had worked there for 10 months, long enough to know which guests thanked the staff and which looked through them. She needed the job for one reason. Her late aunt's dance studio was days away from foreclosure. Monroe House of Movement offered free evening classes to women rebuilding their lives after abuse, unemployment, and homelessness. Aaliyah's aunt Selena had founded it with donated mirrors and a second-hand piano. After Selena died, unpaid taxes and repair bills fell to Aaliyah. Every extra shift at Vale House went toward keeping those doors open. To them, Aaliyah was simply quiet, precise, and unusually graceful for someone carrying laundry baskets and silver trays. Sebastian Vale noticed. At 38, Sebastian controlled one of the largest private hospitality groups in the Midwest. He was respected for his discipline, feared in negotiations, and photographed beside luxury hotels and restoration projects. At home he was different. He remembered names. He spoke to the kitchen staff before approving menus. When an elderly housekeeper injured her back, he moved her into an administrative role instead of dismissing her. Aaliyah respected him but kept her distance. His fiancée did not. Brielle Carrington had moved into the estate 5 months earlier with a stylist, a social media manager, and enough luggage to fill a guest wing. She came from a family whose wealth survived generations of scandals by turning every mistake into a charity event. In public, Brielle was charming. In private, she treated the staff as entertainment. Her friends Camille Prescott and Sloane Mercer were worse. They arrived without warning, demanded elaborate lunches, and invented humiliating games whenever they were bored. Once, Camille asked a server to pronounce French menu items while the others recorded him. Another time, Sloane dropped a bracelet into a flower arrangement and accused a maid of hiding it. Aaliyah never reacted. That made Brielle curious. "You stand like someone waiting for applause," she told Aaliyah one afternoon. "I'm standing the way my job requires." "No," Brielle said, studying her. "It's something else." Aaliyah lowered her eyes and continued arranging white roses. Brielle stepped closer. "Have we met before?" "No, ma'am." It was almost true. 7 years earlier, Aaliyah had seen Brielle across a crowded theater in Chicago. Aaliyah had been 22, performing under bright stage lights with her dance partner, Marcus Reed. They were one routine away from winning a national ballroom championship. Then Marcus never arrived for the final performance. His car was found crushed against a barrier outside the city. Police called it a hit and run. No arrest was made. Aaliyah stopped dancing that night. She packed away her shoes, abandoned her scholarship, and returned home to help Selena run the studio. But Brielle's friend Sloane had been at that competition. Aaliyah remembered her because Sloane had argued with Marcus backstage hours before he died. She never learned why. The upcoming Winter Legacy Gala brought the past closer. Sebastian planned to announce an arts initiative funding community studios across the country. Brielle insisted on controlling the event, claiming she wanted to surprise him with a live performance. Aaliyah was assigned to clean the private rehearsal room. One evening she heard music behind the closed door. Her body froze. It was Marcus's final composition. The piece had never been released. He wrote it for their championship routine and recorded only one rehearsal copy. Aaliyah opened the door. Brielle, Camille, and Sloane stood around a laptop while a professional dance couple practiced the steps Aaliyah and Marcus had created. Sloane saw her first. "What are you doing here?" "Cleaning." Brielle shut the laptop. Aaliyah stared at the screen. "Where did you get that music?" Brielle's expression sharpened. "Why would that concern you?" "It belongs to someone I knew." Sloane went pale. Only for a second. Then she laughed. "A maid knows championship choreography now?" Aaliyah looked directly at her. "You were in Chicago 7 years ago." The room fell silent. Sloane reached for her champagne glass. "I've been to Chicago many times. You argued with Marcus Reed backstage." Brielle looked between them. "Who is Marcus Reed?" "No one," Sloane replied too quickly. Aaliyah stepped toward the laptop. Sloane slammed it shut. "Get out." Aaliyah did not move. Brielle smiled, sensing a new way to entertain herself. "Wait. If she knows the routine, perhaps she can perform it at the gala." "I don't dance anymore," Aaliyah said. "Then we'll help you remember." The following morning, Aaliyah found an old photograph pushed beneath her staff room door. It showed Marcus standing beside Sloane in the theater parking lot on the night he died. On the back, someone had written, "Ask her what happened after midnight." Aaliyah hid the photograph inside her uniform and went looking for Sebastian. She found him in the library reviewing gala contracts. Before she could speak, Brielle entered with Camille and Sloane. "There she is," Brielle said brightly. "The entertainment for our little rehearsal." Aaliyah stopped. Sebastian looked up. "What rehearsal?" Brielle walked toward Aaliyah and took the photograph from the edge of her apron before she could stop her. For the first time, Sloane's face showed real fear. Brielle examined the image, then smiled. "Well," she said softly, "now I understand why our maid has been watching us." She tore the photograph in half. And Sebastian rose slowly from behind his desk. Sebastian's chair scraped sharply against the library floor. For 1 second nobody spoke. Brielle stood beside Aaliyah with the torn photograph in her hands. Camille looked amused, but Sloane had gone visibly pale. Her champagne glass trembled against her fingers. Sebastian walked around the desk. "Why did you tear that?" Brielle laughed lightly. "Because it was obviously some strange attempt to frighten Sloane." Aaliyah bent down and picked up both halves. "It was pushed under my door this morning." Sebastian looked at Sloane. "Do you know the man in that photograph?" Sloane lifted her chin. "I met hundreds of performers during those years." "His name was Marcus Reed," Aaliyah said. "He died the same night this picture was taken." Camille's smile disappeared. Brielle folded her arms. "And what exactly are you accusing my friend of?" "I haven't accused anyone. You followed us into a private rehearsal, questioned our guests, and brought a photograph into Sebastian's study. That sounds like an accusation." Sebastian's eyes remained on Sloane. "What happened after midnight?" The question struck her harder than Aaliyah expected. Sloane placed her glass down. "I left the theater before midnight." Aaliyah held up the photograph. Behind Marcus and Sloane, the theater clock above the entrance showed 12:17. "That isn't true." Brielle stepped between them. This has gone far enough. Sebastian did not move. Let her answer. Sloane's face tightened. Marcus was upset. He believed the competition judges had been bribed. Aaliyah stared at her. He never said that to me. Maybe he didn't trust you. The words landed cruelly. Aaliyah forced herself to remain calm. What were you arguing about? Sloane glanced toward Brielle before answering. He wanted money. For what? I don't remember. You remember enough to lie about when you left. Sloane's voice rose. I was 23. It was 7 years ago. I had been drinking. I don't owe a household employee an interrogation. Sebastian's expression hardened. You owe the truth if someone died. Brielle turned toward him. You're seriously allowing a maid to question one of our friends in your home? I'm allowing a woman to ask about the death of someone she loved. The room went quiet again. Aaliyah looked at Sebastian, surprised by the certainty in his voice. Brielle noticed. Her eyes became colder. Everyone out, she said. Sebastian looked at her. This is my library. Humiliation flashed across Brielle's face. Camille quickly took Sloane's arm. We should go. Sloane moved toward the door, but Aaliyah spoke before she reached it. Where did you get Marcus's music? Sloane stopped. Brielle answered for her. A private archive. Which one? I don't remember the name. You remembered enough to choose the only song he never released. Brielle's smile vanished. Sebastian turned toward her. Is that true? Aaliyah nodded. Marcus wrote it for our final routine. Only 3 copies existed. Mine, his, and the rehearsal studio's. The original studio had burned 2 months after Marcus died. Aaliyah's copy remained locked inside a trunk beneath the floorboards of Monroe House of Movement. That left Marcus's copy. Sloane walked out without answering. Camille followed. Brielle remained behind. She moved close to Aaliyah and spoke quietly enough that Sebastian could barely hear. You should be careful which ghosts you invite into this house. Then she followed her friends into the hallway. Sebastian closed the library door. Aaliyah looked down at the torn photograph. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have brought this into your home. You should have brought it sooner. She looked up. He pointed toward the photograph. Whoever left that wanted you to ask questions. Do you know who took it? No. Do you have the original? This is the original. Then someone kept it for 7 years. Aaliyah fitted the torn halves together on his desk. The photograph showed Marcus near a black car while Sloane stood in front of him. A third figure appeared inside the driver's seat, but the windshield reflection hid the face. Sebastian picked up a magnifying lens used for examining antique documents. There's a hotel valet ticket on the dashboard. Aaliyah leaned closer. The logo belonged to the Halcyon Crown, one of Sebastian's oldest hotels. The championship guests stayed there, Aaliyah said. Marcus came to meet someone after rehearsal. Sebastian examined the date printed across the ticket. The hotel still archives garage records. You can access them. I own the building. For the first time since entering the library, Aaliyah felt hope. Then Sebastian's phone rang. His expression changed as he listened. What do you mean the gala account is frozen? Aaliyah watched him walk toward the windows. Who authorized the withdrawal? Was. Do not contact Brielle yet. Send everything directly to me. He ended the call. What happened? Leah asked. $200,000 disappeared from the Arts Initiative account. Her stomach tightened. That is almost the amount needed to stop the studio foreclosure. Sebastian looked at her. How do you know? My aunt's studio owes $187,000. He stared at her for a long moment. Aaliyah understood what the coincidence looked like. Before either could speak, the library door opened again. Brielle entered with the estate accountant and 2 security officers. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. I just received a call from the Foundation Bank. Sebastian's jaw tightened. I told them not to contact you. They contacted me because my authorization code was used. She placed a folder on the desk. Inside were printed transfer records. The missing money had been deposited into an account belonging to Monroe House of Movement. Aaliyah stared at the page. That's impossible. Brielle turned toward the guards. Search her room. Sebastian stepped forward. Nobody searches anything until I verify this. The accountant cleared his throat. Mr. Vale, the transfer originated from your private office terminal. Brielle looked at Aaliyah. And who has been entering this room without permission? I haven't touched his computer. Brielle opened another folder. Security stills showed Aaliyah inside the library at 2:11 that morning. She wore her uniform and stood beside Sebastian's desk. Aaliyah examined the image. The woman had her height, her skin tone, and her hair wrapped in the same low bun. But Aaliyah had been at the dance studio that night repairing a broken heating pipe. I wasn't here. Brielle smiled sadly. Of course you weren't. One guard entered the hallway, then returned carrying a black dance bag. We found this beneath her bed. He opened it. Inside were stacks of cash, Sebastian's private office key, and Marcus Reed's missing music notebook. Aaliyah's breath stopped. Brielle lifted the notebook. On the first page was Marcus's handwriting. Beneath it, written in fresh black ink, were the words, Aaliyah knows what happened. Make sure she never dances again. Sebastian stared at the message. Aaliyah looked from the money to the notebook. Someone had not merely framed her for theft. Someone wanted Marcus's death to follow her into the present. Brielle faced the guards. Remove her from the estate. Sebastian raised one hand. No. Brielle turned on him. You have bank records, security footage, stolen keys and cash. What more do you need? The truth. Aaliyah looked at him. He picked up the notebook and examined the ink beneath the desk lamp. This warning was written recently. Brielle's face stiffened. Sebastian continued. And whoever staged that footage made one mistake. He enlarged the security image on his computer. The woman pretending to be Aaliyah wore a silver bracelet. Sloane had been wearing the same bracelet less than 10 minutes earlier. Brielle looked toward the doorway. But Sloane was already running across the entrance hall. Aaliyah followed her. Sloane reached the front doors, only to find them locked for the evening. She spun around, breathing hard. Stay away from me. Tell me what happened to Marcus, Aaliyah said. Sloane's eyes filled with tears. I didn't kill him. Then who did? Before Sloane could answer, the enormous chandelier above them jerked loose. Sebastian saw it first. Aaliyah! She looked up. The chandelier was falling directly toward her. Sebastian moved before the chandelier struck. He grabbed Aaliyah around the waist and threw both of them behind a marble column as the crystal fixture crashed onto the entrance hall floor. Glass exploded across the tiles. Guests screamed from the adjoining rooms, and dust rolled through the corridor like smoke. For several seconds, Aaliyah heard nothing except the ringing in her ears. Sebastian's arm remained around her. Are you hurt? She shook her head. Across the hall, Sloane stood frozen near the locked doors. The falling chandelier had missed her by only a few feet. Her face was white with terror. That wasn't an accident, Aaliyah said. Sebastian looked up at the severed support cable. The metal had been cut cleanly. Security rushed into the hall. Brielle arrived seconds later, pressing a hand to her mouth with perfect shock. What happened? Someone cut the cable, Sebastian said. Brielle stared at Aaliyah. And she was chasing Sloane beneath it. Aaliyah turned toward her. You're blaming me for this too. I'm stating what everyone saw. Sloane suddenly shouted. Stop! Every face turned toward her. Tears streaked her makeup. She looked at Brielle like someone who had finally become more afraid of silence than truth. You said nobody would get hurt. Brielle's posture changed. Sloane, you're in shock. No. I'm done. She stepped away from the doors. 7 years ago, Marcus discovered your father was buying competition judges and laundering money through dance scholarships. He copied the payment records. You asked me to meet him at the Halcyon Crown and convince him to return them. Aaliyah could barely breathe. What happened after midnight? Sloane forced herself to continue. Marcus refused. He said he was going to the press after the final performance. Brielle arrived with her brother, Julian. They followed him when he left the hotel. Brielle's face went cold. You're lying. Sloane looked at Aaliyah. I saw Julian's car hit Marcus's vehicle near the bridge. Brielle told me it was only meant to scare him. Then she paid me to say I had left before midnight. The entrance hall went silent. Aaliyah felt 7 years of grief shift beneath her feet. You watched him die. I called an ambulance after they left, Sloane whispered. But it was too late. Aaliyah wanted to hate her. Instead, she saw a frightened woman who had spent years obeying someone crueler than herself. Sebastian turned toward Brielle. Did your family steal the gala money to frame Aaliyah? Brielle laughed, but the sound broke. You're believing a maid and a drunk over your future wife. I'm believing the cut cable above her head. Brielle backed toward the staircase. Then the lights went out. A fire alarm screamed through Vale House. Emergency lights flashed red as smoke poured from the library corridor. Security moved toward the flames, leaving the entrance hall unguarded for seconds. Brielle ran upstairs. Sloane pointed after her. The music notebook. She kept Marcus's original evidence inside it. Aaliyah followed. Sebastian caught her arm. Wait for security. If she burns that notebook, Marcus's death becomes her word against Sloane's again. They raced upstairs together. Brielle had reached the private rehearsal room. When Aaliyah opened the door, smoke curled from a metal waste bin. Pages burned inside it. Marcus's notebook lay open on the floor. Brielle stood beside the balcony doors holding a memory card. This is what he died for, she said. Payment lists, judges, bank accounts, every person my father bought. Give it to me. Why? So you can ruin us and pretend it brings him back. No. So his death finally means something. Brielle's eyes filled with fury. You think Sebastian offering you one dance makes you important. This was never about the dance. It became about you when he looked at you instead of me. She threw the memory card toward the open balcony. Aaliyah lunged and caught it against the railing. Brielle grabbed her from behind. They struggled beside the edge while smoke thickened. Sebastian rushed forward, but the balcony floor cracked beneath their weight. Aaliyah slipped. One hand caught the iron railing. Below her was a 3-story drop onto the stone terrace. Brielle stood above her, gripping her wrist. For 1 second, Aaliyah believed she might pull her up. Instead, Brielle leaned closer. You should have stayed invisible. Then she began prying Aaliyah's fingers from the railing. Sebastian grabbed Brielle's arm. Let her go. The burning notebook slid across the floor and fell open beside his shoe. Inside the back cover was a signed hotel receipt dated the night Marcus died. The signature belonged to Julian Carrington. Beneath it was a handwritten instruction. Disable the bridge camera before 12:30. Sebastian stared at the evidence. Then the balcony railing tore loose. Aaliyah fell. Aaliyah did not hit the terrace. Sebastian caught the back of her uniform with one hand and the broken railing with the other. For one terrifying second, all three of them hung above the courtyard. Aaliyah below, Sebastian braced against the balcony edge, and Brielle clawing at his sleeve. Help! Sebastian shouted. 2 security officers rushed through the smoke and pulled Aaliyah back onto the balcony. She collapsed against the floor, coughing, while Sebastian dragged Brielle away from the edge. The memory card was still clenched in Aaliyah's hand. Brielle saw it and lunged again, but Sloane appeared in the doorway with a fire extinguisher. She sprayed the flames, then pointed the metal canister directly at Brielle. Don't touch her. Police entered seconds later. The burned notebook, Julian Carrington's signed receipt, and the memory card were secured before Brielle could destroy them. The card contained copies of bribery payments, hotel garage records, and messages between Brielle and Julian discussing how to frighten Marcus before the championship final. One message was more devastating than the rest. If he keeps the evidence, hit his car hard enough to stop him. Brielle claimed she had meant only to delay Marcus. But the bridge camera order, Sloane's testimony, and archived valet footage proved that Julian had followed him from the hotel. Julian was arrested before dawn while trying to board a private flight. Brielle was charged with conspiracy, evidence tampering, attempted murder, fraud, and framing Aaliyah for the stolen gala money. The transfer into Monroe House of Movement was reversed. Investigators found that Brielle had used Sebastian's authorization code and Sloane's disguise to make Aaliyah appear guilty. Sebastian ended the engagement publicly. But Aaliyah did not celebrate Brielle's downfall. She returned to her aunt's studio carrying Marcus's recovered notebook. Inside its final pages, beneath choreography notes and unfinished music, she found a message he had written for her. If fear ever steals the dance from you, take it back one step at a time. For the first time in 7 years, Aaliyah put on her old shoes. Sebastian used the recovered gala funds to launch the arts initiative exactly as planned, but he refused to present the studio as charity. Monroe House of Movement became the program's first official partner, and Aaliyah became its artistic director after completing the degree she had abandoned. Sloane testified against the Carrington family and accepted responsibility for her silence. She later volunteered at the studio, not as a way to erase the past, but to spend her future doing something honest. 1 year later, the Winter Legacy Gala returned to Vale House. The ballroom went quiet when Aaliyah stepped onto the floor wearing a deep blue gown. Marcus's final composition began. Sebastian approached her, but this time he did not offer his hand to rescue her from humiliation. He offered it as an equal. "May I have this dance?" Aaliyah smiled and placed her hand in his. Around them, the same guests who had once watched Brielle mock a maid now rose to their feet as Aaliyah completed the dance she had been denied 7 years earlier. She did not dance for their approval. She danced for Marcus, for Selena, and for the part of herself that cruelty had tried to silence when the truth finally came out. Never laugh at someone because of the uniform they wear. You may be looking at a survivor, an artist, or the bravest person in the room. If Aaliyah's story moved you, subscribe, share it, and comment. Would you have trusted Sloane's confession after 7 years of silence?